And thanks everybody for coming today. We have a really nice turnout. So for about 4 years ago, the Virginia Poverty Law Center started doing something that we called Facts Not Funds. Right before the General Assembly session starts, there's a lot of fundraisers because the General Assembly members cannot raise funds during the session. And so we decided to have our own event, but obviously we have no funds to give. So we decided we would provide facts. And so for the last 3 years or so, we've had legislators and their aides come over to our office and chat with us informally about our legislative agenda. So obviously we can't do that this year. And so we thought we would just do this coffee chat instead. And so I'm just going to informally go over maybe for about 10 minutes or so, some of the briefly about some of the things on our legislative agenda, and then open it up for questions. And I hope you have a lot of questions. So this year's session is going to certainly be unusual. This is like, I think, my 21st General Assembly session, my first virtual one, other than not counting the special session last fall. One thing I wanted to mention before I got into the legislative agenda is something that usually we wait till the end and then we forget to say some of these things, but a lot of people have questions about what you can do to get involved during the session to help try to sway how things go. And so I would like to mention, first of all, on the Virginia Poverty Law Center website, if you go to our website, right at the top, you can click on the General Assembly, and that will take you to our General Assembly Session Action Center, and you can see, you can put your email in there, and you can start getting our emails about what's going on at the session, and you can also get action alerts. From time to time we send around action alerts, and it will be something to the effect of Delegate Simon's House Bill 101 is up tomorrow in Senate Commerce and Labor. Please contact these members of that committee and ask them to vote yes. That sort of thing. So the other thing I would mention is, a lot of people don't do this, but I recommend that you follow your delegate and your senator on social media. And I recommend to people that you think about giving some positive feedback. I always hear this from delegates and senators that they get plenty of negative feedback. Lots and lots of negative feedback, but they don't get much positive feedback. And if your senator or delegate is putting in a bill or is made a nice speech on the floor or is saying the right things that you agree with, give some of that positive feedback. I think it goes a long way. I think as one delegate told me once, they need to know when they're doing things the right way and that people are appreciating what they're doing. So I think that's important. So we divide our work up into centers, and the first center that I'll talk about is the Center for Economic Justice. And so one big issue that, of course, is on everybody's mind, and it should be, is evictions. Because of the pandemic and so many people losing their jobs, a lot of people can't pay their rent. And I'm sure most of you have read lots and lots of stories about what's going on, and it's a real crisis. And so we have some legislation. The one bill that we're going to be pushing is the elimination of the limitation on a tenant's right to pay and stay. In other words, in Virginia right now, the law is that one time per year, if you are sued for an eviction, it's called an unlawful detainer. You can pay everything that you owe before the eviction, and you can stay. But unfortunately, that is limited to one time per year, and we don't think that makes any sense. We think that limitation should be taken away, and anytime somebody pays what they're owed and the landlord's made whole, why should we go ahead with the eviction? I see Marty Wegbright is on the call, and Marty, I'm going to steal something from your op-ed that was in the Richmond Times-Dispatch. We think, and the legal aid attorneys around the state agree, that eviction should be a last resort. It should not be the first resort. It should be a last resort. It's good for tenants. It's good for landlords. It's good for everybody. So that's really where our legislation is headed towards. Another bill, which I see now has a number, House Bill 1889, patroned by Delegate Price. It there's a she had a bill passed in a special session which extended the pay or quit period. So in Virginia, if you don't pay your rent, the landlord is required to give you a pay or quit notice. And basically it's the notice that says pay your rent or you have to leave, or I'll bring a legal action to have you put out. And it used to be just a 5-day notice. The special session bill increased that to 14 days. And so Delegate Price's bill will just take that sunset off and make that permanent. To us, it makes a whole lot more sense to give somebody 14 days to pay rather than 5 days. And the other thing it does is it requires all landlords who own 5 or more units. So this doesn't apply to small landlords, but anybody who owns 5 or more units must offer a payment plan to anybody who falls behind on rent. Another bill that surrounding evictions is House Bill 1900. Delegate Hudson is patroning this bill. And basically, we're trying to strengthen the law to prohibit landlords from engaging in illegal evictions. Well, what's an illegal eviction? Anytime a landlord tries to put you out without taking you to court first. So what landlords, the vast majority of landlords do not do this, but there are some landlords that will cut off your utilities, change the locks, even remove doors and windows, all to try to get people to leave illegally. But in Virginia, you must take the person to court. And so we have at the Poverty Law Center, we have an eviction legal helpline. And so people call us for legal help when they're facing an eviction. And we're hearing more and more the last few months about these landlords' attempts to illegally evict people. So we think it's important to strengthen the law on that, to try to stop landlords from doing this. The very few landlords that do this, we need to stop them from doing this. So another issue that's going to be in the General Assembly this year is rent relief. And the governor has some money in his budget. And thankfully, due to the Congressional Emergency Relief Bill, Virginia is going to get some $568 million in rent relief. And this is relief that goes directly to landlords. Landlords can apply for this, tenants can apply for this. So it's not a situation where we're expecting the landlords to just accept not getting rent. There is money out there. They just need to apply for it, and the tenants need to apply for it and get this rent relief rather than evicting people. So moving on to another subject, we have a bill that we're calling the Preserving the American Dream Act. In homeownership is synonymous with the American dream, and homeownership is synonymous also with building wealth in this country. And so we have Delegate Torian and Delegate Bourne and Senator McClellan are putting in bills, and we don't have a bill number yet, that are address this issue of preserving the American dream or preserving home ownership. And the first thing this bill does is much like with our attempts to try to make eviction a last resort, we want to make foreclosure a last resort. We think it's a bad situation for everyone when a homeowner loses their home to foreclosure. So we're trying to ameliorate that somewhat. In Virginia, the only restriction on a mortgage company that's trying to take your home is that they have to send you a 14-day notice that there is a foreclosure sale pending. In other words, they're going to sell your home at a foreclosure, and you get a 14-day notice. We're trying to expand that to 60 days. That's what this legislation does, is you have to give a homeowner 60 days notice of this foreclosure sale. And we're also, the bill also addresses what has to be in that notice. It's going to tell people that they're not being evicted, that they have rights. They should talk to a lawyer. They should talk to even more important, to talk to a homeowner's counseling agency to try to figure out how they can keep their home. Or in some situations, for some people, it might be best for them to sell the home and not lose all their equity. But in any event, we want to give people time to not go through a foreclosure, but to work out a different result that's good for, and we think it's good for mortgage companies as well as homeowners. The other thing that legislation is going to do is it's going to address mobile home parks. We see mobile home ownership as a good source of low-cost housing for people. A lot of people own their trailers, but they pay rent on the land that it's sitting on. And so we want to basically what our legislation is going to do is to try to encourage localities to include improvement and maintenance of these mobile home parks in their planning. And we think that's important for localities to do, to recognize that these can be really good sources of low-income housing and affordable housing for people, as well as a lot of people really treasure these communities, have lived there for a long time and know all the people, and these can be good communities. Now so moving on to the Center for Healthy Communities. We are working on increasing access to SNAP, which a lot of people know as food stamps, but it's now called SNAP. And there is language in the governor's proposed budget which increases access for a lot of people to food stamps, which we think is important. So we're going to be encouraging the legislature to keep that language in the governor's budget, and we're actually hoping that was somewhat of a modification of that to make it clearer that will continue going forward. We estimate that this will bring $10 million in federal funds to Virginia. So it's a win-win economically, as well as getting food to Virginia's families. Moving on, an interesting issue that we've never addressed before is birth certificates. Senator Locke is carrying a bill, Senate Bill 1121. We found that we have a senior legal helpline in our office, so people, older folks, call us for legal advice on different things, and we've been hearing a lot about people who need to correct their birth certificates. So I've never heard about this until just recently, but there's a lot of errors on birth certificates done, older birth certificates, maybe back in the 40s, 50s, maybe even 60s. And the process can be kind of difficult to correct that. And we understand that some people actually even have to go to court to correct that. And so what this legislation does is to simplify the process. And I will say that I understand that the Department of Vital Statistics is in support of this legislation. I was surprised to hear there's some 15,000 requests per year in Virginia for people to correct their birth certificates. Also under this same center is we have there's going to be some legislation to protect nursing home residents. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious why we want to do that. It's always been an issue of ours, but even more so in the pandemic. There's no bills yet, but we are anticipating some legislation to incentivize getting people to work in nursing homes. As you can imagine, it's a difficult job anyway, and now it's become somewhat of a dangerous job. And so there needs to be some things done to incentivize people to work in nursing homes. There is a bill that's been introduced that we are going to support, Senate Bill 1149. Senator Kiggins has put this bill in, and it addresses nursing home standards of care and staff requirements. It requires the State Board of Health to establish staffing and care standards in nursing homes to require a minimum of direct care services to each resident per 24-hour period. In other words, it forced some nursing homes to beef up their staff to where it should be. So residents are taken care of well. Now, the last center is our Center for Family Advocacy. For many years, we have advocated for children in foster care, and this year we will be supporting any bills that with emphasis on kinship care for children in foster care. In other words, supporting families or kins, I guess is the way of people who want to take care of their kids in foster care. So anything we can do to keep kids out of foster care and in kinship care. We have supported that for many years, and we'll continue to do that. We also will support legislation to improve legal representation for families of children in foster care. And then last thing I will talk about is workplace harassment. Both Senator McClellan and Delegate Watts are going to be patroning bills to end workplace harassment. Apparently, the legislation will define what harassment is, as it's not currently defined by the Virginia Human Rights Act. So we think this is important to be done in the legislation. So Tony, that's all I have. And I hope folks will ask a lot of questions. So
thanks, Jay. And as Jay said, we're going to open it up for questions now. Just unmute yourself and go for it.
John, let's start. This is Marty Wegbright with Central Virginia Legal Aid Society. And Jay, and perhaps Laura as well, I saw you on this. I know last year there was an effort in the General Assembly to enact a warranty of habitability in landlord-tenant cases, so that tenants basically had a universal remedy in all cases to deal with rental housing that was not fit or habitable. I know it was shelved last year, possibly to be carried over to this year. Is there any possibility of that being revived? I know that the General Assembly is operating under restricted number of bills that people can submit, so it may not be an issue for this year, but I thought I'd ask.
I can go, Jay. Hi, I'm Laura. I'm one of the housing attorneys with the Poverty Law Center. So Marty, we did try to find a patron for a warranty of habitability bill, but all the members have a limit on the number of bills they can carry this year. And given the short session, we couldn't find anyone to carry it, but it's something that we plan on trying to bring next year and finding a couple of really good patrons for in the House and the Senate. So it's definitely a high priority for us. It's just we don't have a patron for that bill this year.
This is John Horsch from Northern Virginia, and I have a question about, I'm sorry I got in a little late, but how about TANF? Anything you're working on there by way of disregards, increasing the disregards on income and or benefits, increase, benefits are like 1/5 of the poverty level. That's what we do to children in relative care or in on welfare. Could you comment on that?
sure. And John, you of course know a whole lot more about this than I do, but there will be a budget amendment, and I think we're looking for an 18% increase in TANF benefits. I think the thinking is that we're going to, over the next 4 years, try to get this up to 50% of the federal poverty line, which is incredibly small amount of money, but still an improvement.
Yeah,
I don't know of anything cooking on disregards.
Okay. There's also when they apply, they can, the federal law is they can have lifetime of eligibility of 5 years, and Virginia has chosen to knock people off after 2 years, and they have to stay off 2 years, then they can come back for another 2 years, and that gap needs to be closed, because if they're working on some kind of apprentice or some kind of accreditation for a better job, that 2-year disruption, a lot of times that means that they have to fall back and take the lowest paying job, the first lowest paying job that's offered to them. So that's something that really needs, that 2-year gap needs to be closed. Virginia is one of the few states that does that.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of, one thing I didn't mention in the beginning, but, and a lot of you already know this, of course, but this year is going to be very tough to get things done, because the session is going to be virtual, and we have severe limits on the amount of bills that legislators can introduce. And on top of that, we just had a long special session and the legislators are frankly worn out. So it just creates an atmosphere where it's going to be tough. I mean, the virtual thing I think is just huge. I mean, when I think about how a session usually works, where all the legislators are in the same building, they talk to each other pretty much every day, they see each other in the hall, they have all these conversations. It's just, you can't do those things over Zoom the same way. And it's just, so it's tough. And so a lot of things are going to unfortunately have to wait, I think, till next year.
What are the bill limits this year? Number.
This House, I think, is 7. There's somebody on here that knows better than I do.
Yeah, that's right. House is 7. I think the Senate is it 11 or 12, I believe.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, this is Delegate Simons. The House is 7. We were just talking with some of the other delegates, and I think the best way to get in touch with your legislators is going to be to ask their legislative assistants when their office hours are, because we're all definitely trying to block off time each day, and even Saturdays, to have 15-minute blocks to talk with constituents. So that's one way. And I think the best way to do that is by email. The phones are mostly being forwarded to a voicemail. And then we're getting an email telling us there's a voicemail. So the calls, I think, are going to be mostly going to voicemail. The other thing that I just heard in terms of public testimony during committee is that getting written public comment in early is important. And there's really no limit to written public testimony. And I think that's going to be a good way to reach your legislators. If you actually want to testify in person on Zoom, you need to make sure you sign up at least an hour before, because the rumor is they're going to cut off the testimony, the list of testimony an hour before. That's what I just heard. So I would just make sure to get in early if you want to make if you want to testify publicly.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank
Delegate
you. That's
Simons.
really helpful. I really appreciate that.
we had something in the chat, and I want to ask Christina if she would like to ask her question, or if you'd rather me.
No, I'm sure. I mean, I put it in the chat, so I didn't know who would be the appropriate person to respond to it. So I work for a large international NGO. We're headquartered in Alexandria, but we also do work US domestically. And because we are Virginia based, we obviously join every year such things as the Day for All People. So this year, being that it's virtual, we're trying to get more of our staff to actually participate than just our advocacy staff. So to train up staff that's generally not their role and function. And so just wondering, if there's anything special in the agenda that would be most useful for our team of advocates to, participate in, especially from an interfaith and poverty and social justice lens.
Well, we partner with the Virginia Interfaith Center on a lot of different issues. We support some of their issues and they support some of our issues. So that's certainly one good source. And I know the Day of All People is sort of a week-long virtual thing this year, I think. And the United Methodists usually have a day, and they're also joining in that, and probably some other groups as well. So I think you probably see a pretty good list from the Interfaith Center and groups like that. And it's hard for me to pick out what you may or may not be most interested in, but
one thing that's an overlap, Jay, is we are working with them. They are the lead on paid sick leave for essential workers. So that's one of the bills that we are working on. It's not our bill, it's their bill, but we are assisting with that effort. It's a coalition around that. So that's one of the things. And I believe that they are also working on the TANF increases as well. So I think those are some good places to start. So, public benefits in particular, and then paid sick leave are some of the areas that you may want to focus on, as those are definitely overlap issues for us.
Yeah, and another one I just thought of was the migrant farm workers. Currently, migrant farm workers are exempt from the state minimum wage. That exemption needs to be taken out. And that's also an interface center issue as well as, and we will support that as well.
I want to make sure that everybody saw Delegate Simon's information in the chat. You're so helpful. Thank you. She's mentioning that the daily schedule for the caucus starts at 3 p.m. and then the House of Delegates sessions begin at 4 and will go late. Bless you for your work, for all that you guys are doing over the General Assembly. Any other questions? We're kind of ticking down towards the 9:30 mark. And so again, being mindful of what we had promised for this event. But that does not necessarily mean we don't want to answer a question you may have. Go ahead, John. You're muted. You're muted. I don't.
Unmuted.
Yes.
Okay. Anything on prison issues?
No, we don't typically work on those issues in our office.
Yeah. We're working with Senator Eben on ending private prisons. So that's, he has a bill in, and I don't have the bill in front of me. It just came in, but it's a good bill. And there's so many problems there. We were just on a ABC, what is it, WRIC in Richmond. We did a program with Brian O'Brien, Kerry O'Brien, and there seems to be picking up a lot of support and interest in ending the management by GEO, which is has a profit motive rather than doing the job, the care of the prisoners.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, John. And so we've just ticked to 9:30. I do want to bless and release everyone. Again, we will stay around for a few minutes if we have additional questions that you didn't wish to ask in the public venue. Real quickly, the email that confirmed the Zoom information for this morning includes how to sign up for our action alerts. I also understand our housing team are going to be sending out an e-newsletter that will be housing specific. So if you'd like to sign up for that, the link is in that as well. And for the first time, we have a General Assembly page that will be following the bills that VPLC introduces. And so if you want to see how things are going along during the session with those bills, just come back to VPLC's site and click the General Assembly button, and it will take you there. And as always, we're here if you have questions during the session. I know our lobbyists will be very busy. You can always reach out to me and I can do my best to help you find the answers as they quickly go through the short session to help our lower income friends and neighbors lead a better life.
Hey, Tony, if I can mention something real quick.
Of course.
I just put a link in the chat. So Legislative Services having a meeting starting now about how the public testimony process is going to go. So if you're interested in learning more, you can click on that link and just hop into another Zoom call for the morning.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. Thanks, everybody, for coming.
Thank you. Very good.
Bye.
Thank you.
Um,
Hi, Tony.
Megan.
and Jay. I just wanted to ask, I'm a first-year intern with Senator Locke's office, and we're working obviously on the birth certificate bill. Are you guys, can I just grab your information? Because Jay, you had mentioned some statistics and stuff for that specific bill, and I just wanted to make sure I had y'all's contact for the intern that's working specifically with that bill.
Yeah, so the easiest thing to do, do you just want to email me? Is that easiest for you?
Yeah, I just wanted to may had your email because you had,
Yeah,
like, I hadn't seen the statistic on 15,000 people asking for new birth certificates, and we've
Yeah.
been doing the research on the bill, so I wanted to make sure they had a contact for you.
So actually, Emily Hardy is the best person to contact about that at our office.
Emily
And so her
Hardy.
email is emily@vplc.org.